Florida State rumored to the SEC. We went through this last summer as well. What does the SEC see in Florida State? What does Florida State see in the SEC? We will delve into the numbers athletically, football program in particular, academically, culturally, the SEC and Florida State. Is it a fit? Who did the Seminoles bring with them? Right on Seminoles Live right here for the next 60 minutes, edition number 165. And the guy that makes it all work, of course, Jason Parker, NBC6.
You have us going to the SEC already. You're really just pushing the SEC hard, ignoring our possibility. I mean, we could join the Pac-12 at this rate, the Big 12, Conference USA. At this rate, we just need to get out of the ACC. 1 week ago, we talked about it. 1 week, we're still in the ACC. Guys, get out. Get out of the ACC at this rate. I don't care.
So everybody,
join the MEAC.
Jump on back. Check out last week's show. Jason and I discussed the differences and the comparison between the Big Ten and the SEC and which should be the move. We want to bring in Tony Altamore here in just a minute, but we've got plenty of player news to get to concerning the 2023 class. At the conclusion of last week's show, of course, Logan, our man Logan, had a tidbit, a lead, which turned out to be true. Lucas Simmons chooses Florida State.
Mazel tov to Logan. He got this one right. Lucas Simmons, 4-star offensive lineman. This is a big get for Florida State. 6'7", 300 pounds, native of Sweden, plays high school in Clearwater down in the Tampa Bay area. This just continues what we've seen from the 2023 class, and Logan talked a little bit about this last week, getting the defensive line set, getting the offensive line set. This is a big target. He's going to play that tackle position. This is the solidifying that tackle spot for upcoming seasons. I don't think he'll start as a freshman in 2023, but come 2024, 2025, maybe 2026, you can expect to see a lot of Lucas Simmons in that tackle position. And this goes back to Alex Atkins, our offensive line coach, offensive coordinator. He is going back and he's solidifying that line, which has been god-awful for about 5 seasons now. So, is it sexy? No. Is it delicious? No. But is it somebody we need? Absolutely.
Lucas Simmons is the 13th rated offensive tackle in the country. Clearwater, as Jason mentions, top 100 player, 109 to be exact. Top 25 player in the state of Florida. Big guy, 6'7", 300. Now, we see 300 all the time, but 6'7", fairly rare.
That's a big man. That's like you standing on my shoulders. I'm 5'10", so.
Yeah, we're both 5'10".
I think you're taller than 9 inches. Yeah, but that's still, you just consider that. 6'7", and that's going to be somebody blocking left tackle position. If he can come into the left tackle spot, that's going to be amazing. Now, who will the quarterback be for that team? Who knows at this rate?
So, fortunately, in recent weeks, we've seen Florida State up its status of selections and commits. Unfortunately, though, one that's been rumored for a long, long time and actually was a Florida State commit at one point has officially decommitted from Florida State, and that would be one quarterback in Chris Parson.
Yeah, Chris Parson, 4-star quarterback from the state of Tennessee, Ravenwood High School, Ravenwood, Tennessee. Yeah, like you said, this has been one we had seen kind of going for a while. Logan talked about how he'd kind of been backing off things a little bit. The story apparently is, and then once again, this is just you're hearing from different people that reportedly his father was upset that Florida State was going after other quarterback recruits, namely a kid by the name of Brock Glenn, who's also a 4-star quarterback from Memphis, Tennessee. But Chris, apparently his dad did not like that. Reportedly his dad did not like that, told Florida State to stop recruiting other quarterbacks. If you're going to keep Chris committed as part of the class, Florida State kept recruiting, and Chris said bye. And now there's reports he could go to Mississippi State. There's reports other ACC schools have offered him. I can see both sides of this. From the Parson family aspect, Florida State has shown love to Chris from the beginning. He had been a long time commit to Florida State. So from their aspect, why is Florida State still shopping around if Chris supposedly is the guy? That being said, if you're Florida State, you have to do your due diligence. You have to go after other recruits for this very reason. It's verbal commits for a reason. Like down here at the University of Miami, they're loving themselves about all these great recruits that they're getting right now, these great verbal commits they're getting, they could all leave tomorrow. That's why I don't get so hyped up about verbal commitments at this point. So we're getting here. We have a grain of salt right now. 42nd ranked class according to 24/7. That by the end of the season could be up to a top 10 class. So right now, everyone take a deep breath. It's not the end of the world.
Our buddy John Sarian is saying, you know what, Chris Parson, go. See ya. Brock Glenn, according to John, is an upgrade. If you look at the rankings, they're similar.
They're
very
virtually similar guys. I think Brock's about 2 inches taller than Chris. They're about the same size. Yeah, like you said, exactly, Mark. The rating-wise, they're about the same. I guess my position would be I want the guy who wants to play at Florida State. And it's nothing personal against Chris. If Chris decided he wants to go look somewhere else, if he decides that some other school wants him more than Florida State, that's Chris Parson's decision. If Brock decides he wants to come to Florida State and wants to be a Seminole, we'll welcome him with open arms. But it has to be somebody who wants to commit to being a Seminole, wants to commit to the turnaround and to hopefully not another coaching change in the near future.
All right. Last week, Jason made his case for Florida State to the Big Ten. We also discussed, I was not an advocate for, but I filled in the gap to present the SEC side. And I am very much looking forward to, as we bring in James Coleman and Tony Altimore, consultant strategist, as Tony will present all sorts of facts and figures regarding culture, academics, football, athletics. You guys will soak that up, and I will just kick back and enjoy the conversation between you three concerning Florida State and the value of Florida State. James, good to see you as always. Thanks for dropping in.
What's going on?
Big James Coleman, Lord. Florida State fullback. Of course, everybody knows him here, 02 to 05. Tony Altimore. Tony, meet Jason, NBC6. James Coleman, Florida State legend.
There we go. Chop it up there. That's what I like to see. I like to see the chop there. Tony,
I'll tell you guys, actually, when I was, I think, in like 7th or 8th grade, maybe 6th grade, I remember, my dad took me down to watch Florida State in the Big House against Michigan.
Okay.
And Michigan had a great team. I think they won the Heisman Trophy that year.
Yep.
I mean, just a phenomenal Michigan team. And Florida State just ran over them like a Mack truck into a playhouse. I mean, it was just unbelievable, amazing team, and fun to watch. And since then, I always have loved the Seminoles. Although I do blame you guys for a midterm that I screwed up when I was in college, because USC was on its way to play to Tallahassee to play you guys, and our math room was right next to the football field, and so the professor was doing a review, and he'd always say, "All right," and so the most important thing is, and the speakers would go, "Go," and so none of us heard anything he was saying.
As it should.
As it should.
That's more important. Absolutely.
Anyway,
we appreciate you joining us here today. Before we get to talk about Florida State's future conference, I want to talk to James for 1 second. James, we talked a little bit about the commitment that came in, Lucas Simmons, but I want to talk to you real quick. Get your thoughts on Chris Parson decommitting from Florida State. What are your thoughts on that? James. Guys,
James, we don't have you.
If you contribute to Micanopy 1851, you too can get James some real Wi-Fi. That's what we can really get. That's where the money goes to, guys. It's time we admit it.
James, you're looking good. You're just not sounding good.
Huh. James, you're with us. You got us.
Give me a second.
All right. Technology, live technology, ladies and gentlemen. This is a beautiful thing.
It's always an adventure.
This is what we do.
This is where we should fill it in with the chop.
Well, we'll get back to James in a moment, but Tony, I guess we'll start with you on this one. Tony,
okay.
I guess my biggest question for you, yes, Florida State's had 4 straight losing seasons on the football field, record-wise. But looking at Florida State's resume, what do they bring to either conference, the SEC or the Big Ten?
Well, you guys, first of all, let me actually skip ahead to show you guys something real quick. So first of all, Mark, can you put if Mark can put that on there? These are some heat maps I put together that I think are really helpful, and we'll take a look at you guys with the ACC, the SEC, and the Big Ten. You guys, Florida State fits in very, very well today in the ACC. Right in the middle of it. So this on these, what they do is green is sort of the best in the conference, and red is sort of the worst in the conference. But I mean, the ACC only has actually very, very, very good schools. So there's no real worst, but just sort of the number 15 of the conference. And Florida State has long benefited from the ACC. I mean, you guys remember when we were growing up, Florida State was not nearly the academic school that it is today. Like, Florida State has made just amazing strides in academics. A lot of it likely driven because of your relationship through the ACC. People don't understand how the role that conferences really play in institutions and institutional success. And so the ACC has been very, very, very good to Florida State. However, you guys I think are still incredibly valuable despite your losing season. So if you take a look here, just looking at a couple of these metrics here, fan base, you guys have the biggest, the second biggest fan base in the ACC behind Clemson right now. And I'll tell you, I think that is very depressed because of your losing seasons. And that number, so I did a 10-year average over the course of the 2010s, from 2011 data to 2019 data. It sort of works across the whole range. But this has not been a strong decade for Florida State, or for my alma mater either. So I don't know how you feel. Is there somebody's somebody's microphone? But you guys have a huge, very latent fan base that will grow, I think. As far as overall program rank, when we take a look at the 5-year football program rank, you're number 6. When we take a look at the sorry, I think I missaid that on fan base. It was program rank. You're the second best behind Clemson. When we take a look at basketball rank, you guys have actually not been that bad. Take a look at overall sports across the board. You guys have been very good. And we take a look at institutional things. For example, your depending on which academic ranking you guys use, you're very solid. You're top 30 or so academic school in the Power 5. So you're sort of right there in the middle of the ACC. When we take a look at the SEC, however, you guys also fit very, very well in the SEC. You're sort of in its upper tier academically, up there with, UGA and schools like that. The SEC kind of is a little bit trifurcated, I would say, between some outstanding schools, some really, really good schools, and then some okay schools. You guys are up in there with the really, really good schools. And you're not an AAU member, which, I mean, I don't know if they're close, if they think they're close to that or not, but that's a big ding for the Big Ten. We'll get to that in just a sec. But as far as you look here with your stuff with the SEC, I mean, you guys fit in pretty great with the SEC. Even losing aside, I think it was sort of very much a no-brainer for the SEC, because from a marketing standpoint, you guys win, those numbers go up, as we've seen. I don't sort of have the charts on here, but I'll tell you that winning programs that are on an upward trajectory do better. The other thing about the SEC that I think makes you very attractive to them is, I'll tell you a secret that people don't like to know about the SEC. And that is that the SEC likes to add good academic schools. Every school, with the exception of Oklahoma, which I think just like you guys, very good school, but not in AAU. Every school that the SEC has added other than Oklahoma is an AAU school. So the SEC is not messing around with academics. They are boosting up the academic profile of the SEC. They just don't talk about it as much as the Big Ten or the Pac-10 does, or the ACC. When we take a look at you guys in the Big Ten, certainly your athletic legacy is great. You guys are a phenomenal school. But the Big Ten is really just a super, super elite academic league. The Big Ten integrates. This is one of the things why the Big Ten would be great for anybody who joins. The Big Ten integrates its purchasing, a lot of its research, its cybersecurity, it's IT development. All the libraries of the Big Ten and all the Big Ten information systems are linked up together to better enable research and academic elements throughout the school. The Big Ten helps like mentor each other's PhD students, and they have hiring programs to help hire each other's grads into their school. So the thing about the other, and the ACC is doing a little bit of this. The SEC does not do very much of it. The Big 12 does none of it at all. And that is that the Big Ten is a huge institutional boost. The Big Ten people will often joke. They'll say, it's cute that the SEC makes millions of dollars, but we deal in the billions. The B in Big Ten is for billions. And so there are enormous advantages to a school going to the Big Ten. One of the things that I think for you guys that would be tough is, looking at that AAU designator. The Big Ten has never added a school that was not AAU. Michigan State, 1949, they hadn't quite gotten their AAU designation yet. But so since 1949, the Big Ten has never added a school that was not AAU, full stop. Nebraska wasn't AAU, got kicked out, sort of a little drama there. But in the Big Ten, in institutional metrics, you would be, you're very similar to Rutgers in Maryland, but you would probably be the second to last behind Nebraska, which is the bottom of the Big Ten.
Well, anytime we can compare to the State University of New Jersey, that's a good designation.
Yeah.
Right there.
Rutgers is a great school. They just stink at football.
Yeah, my family's from that area. It's not the school. But I guess my question to you would be, if you're both the SEC and you're the Big Ten, I've seen various reports saying that the money payouts, if a Florida State, Clemson, and Miami, Notre Dame were to join the Big Ten, we're talking about possibly $100 million per school. Is some of the various reports I have heard.
I would not see Clemson joining the Big Ten.
Why is that?
Clemson does not meet the Big Ten's institutional levels.
So
honestly,
you legitimately, and I default to you on this one. You don't see the Big Ten bending at all for football to take, because what I've written before is that they could sweep the country if they come in here and take the three biggest possible players in the Southeast left out of that ACC, the three biggest names. They would sweep the Southeast, and they would be the countrywide conference.
I would say that I would not want to have a conversation in Clemson media about Clemson's chances of joining the Big Ten.
Okay.
To be honest, if we took a look at their numbers, and so let's just look at the ACC there. Clemson is at the bottom of the ACC. You guys are in the upper middle of the ACC.
Right.
You would be Clemson would be lower than, I think, probably, I'd have to check if they'd be lower than Nebraska. I think so. Let's take a quick peek. Okay, Clemson's right about the same as Nebraska, but they're very much not AAU.
Okay.
I would not see the Big Ten as a likely destination for Clemson.
Okay. So
culturally, Clemson is not very culturally in the Big Ten school either. Like, just as far as the organization itself goes.
Looking at the qualifier for the AAU designation, it's nothing truly academic. It's just 3/4 of the 60 schools that are AAU members would have to vote for you to be able to get in, per what just the research that I had. And obviously, if the conference is behind you, you've got 1/3 already there, or close to it. So, that seems like a semantic thing that's being pushed by what most things in America are pushed by, the almighty dollar. The thing about Clemson that I don't know, I might not have caught it because, my technology was I had to go switch to my iPad. But Clemson is actually ranked ahead of Florida State as far as TV viewership. And at the end of the day, this is what this is being pushed by. It's not being pushed by, we can talk about academics all day, and that's great. But when it was the first time 85,000 people filled a math room to see somebody do a math problem? It hasn't happened. But we have seen, from a fan perspective, a consistently filled stadium, winning, butts in seats, and a fan base that will travel. And that's why I like the Big Ten, even before we looked at all these other things, is the fact that I played against Penn State in the Orange Bowl was the craziest experience I've ever had. Those people were there for 2 weeks. And it was a whiteout game, basically, for them. Like, they had a home game. And I'm looking at Clemson travels extremely well. Actually, it sucks because Miami is such a good product and you'll get the TV market, but they don't travel like as well as everybody else does. But it would still be hard to get that out. And I guess my thing is with this, USC and UCLA are very good academic schools as well. I don't think people give them enough credit for it. But to actually have a cross, like you could be watching TV, you're watching football from noon, which Big Ten is known for, all the way to midnight. So now your network on Fox now has an advantage over ESPN and CBS, which is what would be with the SEC network. I guess that's the only thing. Because I was wondering at first, I was like AAU, like the Amateur Athletic Union, and then I had to go look at it's the American Association of Universities.
Yeah,
and I was like, okay, well, what is this? It seems like a very research based, like.
I'll tell you, there's a couple schools like Wake Forest and Notre Dame, for example, that are just world-class universities. But and Dartmouth as well. Dartmouth just got into the AAU like 2 years ago.
Is Dartmouth going to join the ACC when we leave or not?
Who knows?
Do you think they
actually UConn should, to be totally honest. But with Jim Moore is doing some good stuff there. But there's some schools like Wake Forest and Notre Dame that do amazing undergrad stuff. They just don't do research, and so they're not AAU schools. They're sort of like the exception to that rule. One thing I'll give you guys an example here. Schools think different. Executives at institutions think differently. So the president of a university is a president of a multi-billion-dollar company. And they're usually running a multi-billion-dollar healthcare system as well. They're CEO of a hospital chain. And sports are a piece of that. So one of the things that I used to always get really annoyed at these SEC commercials that say, like, it just means more. And it's like Paul Feinbaum drivel. And I thought, how do I show the economics of this? Like, I think it means more because it means more money-wise to them. And it does. So I created this SEC Do You Care As Much As We Do index, which figures out how much of your university's core academic budget comes from football profits, interestingly enough. And then I set it at an index of SEC equals 100. So, an average SEC school is 100. How much, does your school rely on football profits? And if you take a look at the ACC, I think it's fascinating because it shows kind of the splits that you guys have in your conference that are sort of tearing it apart a little bit right now, which is that, Clemson and Louisville act very much like SEC schools. You guys are a little lower. You're more like kind of like a Big 12 school. And that's a good thing. It's good to be lower. Lower means you have a bigger school with a bigger enterprise, a bigger academic enterprise. You see Clemson is actually above SEC levels. Now, when you take a look at the Big 10, remember, SEC is 100. Nebraska is the only thing that's even close. Iowa's along with you guys. Others of them are at 40.
And that's with the
30.
Big Ten making so much more money per school than the ACC even.
Yeah, and exactly. And the Big Ten's they're not only are they making a fortune, but they are just so big and such giant educational enterprises that the sports are even tiny. And then if you take a look at the Pac-12, which is sort of why they fit so well with the Big Ten, they're even lower. UCLA is a 15 out of 100, and UCLA, and they make a lot of money. This is, by the way, these are 2019 numbers. So they're from before all the COVID mess. Screwed everybody's budgets up. I ignore that year because it's just dumb numbers. And so from that end, you guys fit much more with here's the SEC itself. You guys were at 87, right? So you guys are right there with Georgia. You're right there with Mizzou. I mean, those are great schools, great institutions in the SEC. Your numbers just don't really look like a Big Ten school. And that's not a bad thing. It's just the Big Ten schools are just a little bit different. And the AAU thing is, because it's not just like, did you get in the AAU? It's like, are you the type of institution? And then are you as an executive going to be making decisions on if I'm another member of that conference, it's like, are you making decisions about my students that are the kinds of decisions I want made?
So,
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to follow along what you said, and your numbers are mind-blowingly amazing. I want to just give you credit for all that math you did. I haven't taken a math course since high school, and your math is amazing there.
Oh, thanks.
But my question to you would be this. So looking at your numbers and looking at what the schools bring to the table, and you, like you said, Florida State has blossomed academically from the time when James and I were students there, when we got our degrees from there. My question to you would be this. If you're Florida State right now, in 2022, it's July of 2022, do you hitch your wagon to, because there's various reports saying they could go to the Big Ten. Maybe do they go with a Miami and a Notre Dame to the Big Ten? Do they go, there's reports that the SEC is looking at Clemson, North Carolina, Virginia, and Florida State, mostly because they have on-campus stadiums. And that's one of the reasons why they're not looking at Miami. Obviously, none of us have been in the room. None of us know what are involved in any conversations. Would you, as Florida State, I feel like they have to go with somebody. I feel like you have to be a package deal with somebody. Do you, at this point, package with Clemson and say maybe Clemson SEC? Do you package with your in-state rival Miami or a Notre Dame and go to a Big Ten where, yes, it may look a little different, but the academic prestige, that how we could raise our school academically, and the money that can come in, and we can talk about the money from that aspect.
So I'll tell you, if you think about like a really good student, right, and they're looking at maybe
me for example,
you for example, exactly, and you're debating about, do you want to go to Georgetown or do you want to go to Harvard? And you're pretty sure you get into Georgetown, and Harvard's a little bit of a long shot. You should apply to Harvard and try to go to Harvard anyway. And I would say the same thing is probably true with, Florida State and the Big Ten. Florida State should absolutely try everything they can to get in the Big Ten, because the advantages of the Big Ten, again, the integration of your libraries, the integration of your research, the integration of the leadership programs to teach your faculty how to run their departments. The Big Ten together saves millions of dollars a year just off like sharing their joint car rental contract. Like literally things like that are just enormous reasons to be in the Big Ten. Chicago dropped football entirely in 1939, stayed in the Big Ten academic wing. Like they're still part of the BTAA because the advantages of being a part of that are so big. B is for billions. If you can get in on that, you absolutely want to get on it. And I know you guys have a pretty new president, I think.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure he is, launching new strategic plans and all that
From
kind of
Harvard,
stuff.
I believe.
What?
Harvard roots, which are in the AAU, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The kings of the AAU. Exactly. And that's the kind of thing is if you can go in there and sell the story of saying, we're going to take Florida State and do just what Michigan State did and build ourselves into a world-class, institution, you bet we're going to be in the AAU. We're going to be running the AAU. We're going to take Florida State and build it into something that's never been before. Look at our ascendancy. This is the same thing Utah did. So Utah was very much on an academic upswing when they joined the Pac-12. And just like you said, you nailed it on the head when you were like, wouldn't it help to have all your conference on your side? Oh, that's exactly what Utah did. And Utah, like within, I think, 3 years or something of joining the Pac-12, they got their AAU invitation. So for Florida State, if you can get into the Big Ten, go for it 100%. And in fact, quite honestly, with your new president starting, and if he's doing new stuff to, building his new strategic plan, launching it, bringing in new people, putting more emphasis on research, all that kind of stuff, probably perfect that the Big Ten's taking a little bit of a breather on membership. You guys probably would love nothing more than to take it. Every year, Florida State gets better academically. Every year, you guys are doing more things, branching out and building the institution. So every year that you sit in the ACC, if you want to be in the Big Ten long term, which is strategically better for your school, then absolutely, like every year you can get closer to that, or you can get more AAU style, like go for it, so that you could be able to get that. Right. And if like the world is sort of blowing up right now, I think, if it was like you guys or Washington is more of a Big Ten school. You guys are Stanford. Obviously Stanford will probably be a Big Ten school above everybody, I think, for a number of reasons. But if you can build the institution to get that, you should take it. At the same time, if the SEC opportunity comes along and it's sort of like now or never, you take that. The thing of it is I think you guys are in a can't lose position right now. I also don't know, the problem is that the finances right now in the ACC are just continuing to lag. But I'll tell you, there's another thing that nobody's talking about that I think is going to become a big thing for the ACC. And that is that there's a ton of money being left on the table for basketball. So the thing about basketball is, you guys probably know this. I don't want to bore everybody, but the basketball money goes out to all divisions of the NCAA, Division II, Division III, everybody. It gets spent by the NCAA. The basketball money is just like party time with the NCAA, given out to everybody like social welfare checks. It's like communism is beautiful if you are into that. But if you're the schools that are earning the money, like the ACC, it's not so beautiful, because there's a lot of money being left on the table with the college basketball tournament. So if the major conferences wanted to do with college basketball what they did with college football, which is say, we're going to take it over, it's our money, we're going to do the exact same tournament, only we're going to cut you all out of it. We're still going to let all the one team from every conference and allow them to fairly earn money and all that. This is just one model of what the finances would look like. This is strictly eat what you kill based on the last 2 years, what each conference could stand to make. You're taking a look at this. The ACC is leaving an extra about $11 million, and probably average out to about 15 if you did it in a normal, like the way I would actually imagine it doing. So call it an extra, 10 to 15 million a year on the table right now that the ACC has earned, that is being given out to Division II and Division III and everybody else. Now, that would be awful for Division II or Division III, but it really isn't their money. They didn't earn it. It's earned by you guys in your ACC tournament, and that is sending people to the big dance. This is just big dance money. Every ACC school is leaving $10 to $15 million on the table right now. That would be really nice in your current TV contract.
So along those lines, and you gave a great sales pitch for the Big Ten. You further solidified why I think, and James and I've talked about why we like the Big Ten. If you were the SEC, what is your sales pitch to Florida State? Because I get it. I understand it. It's the football juggernaut. It's what it is football-wise. What is their pitch to Florida State other than football?
Their pitch is, the Big Ten won't take you, so come to us. I don't. They're institutionally, there is not a reason to be. The SEC is, oh my God, they're going to come for me on Twitter for saying this.
You know what your opening line to this, Tony, is? What do you always say? There are no crap schools in Power 5.
There are no crap schools in Power.
Tony,
right.
Brother, they've been
make everybody feel good first.
No, there are. The lowest team in the Power 5.
They're not very smart already. It's not your fault. You didn't make these numbers. The numbers are the numbers. They're not very smart.
Tony,
there are no bad teams.
Tony, I was
in Power 5.
They've been coming at me for 3 years, Tony. So you're good. Don't worry. They've been coming at me on Twitter for 3 years, so you're fine.
Okay, all right. Yeah, institutionally, the SEC is just not anything on par with the Big Ten, because institutionally, the SEC does not do for you as an institution what the Big Ten does. The SEC does not give you those integrated like the big. We'll pick on the Big 12, because SEC is starting to do a little more stuff. The Big 12, their academic component is they give some like certificates to like the best scholar athletes at your school. Isn't that cool? Whoop-de-doo. The Big Ten, like a guy I was talking to the other day was doing some research stuff, and like the University of he goes to Indiana. The University of Wisconsin has like all this crazy research stuff, and so it's all being like immediately sent to him from Wisconsin to Indiana. Like, for you guys to be able to launch into that, I mean, you'd have all the academic resources of UCLA at your disposal, and of Michigan and Ohio, like if you're part of the Big Ten. In addition to that, like your chairman of the history department is getting his like leadership training with like the chairman of the Big Ten history department. Your PhDs that are trying to graduate and get jobs as professors. Yeah. How about that networking, which is they actually do hire each other's professors into each other's networks. As an institution, again, Big Ten is for billions, not the cute millions of sports. You are exponentially better off if you can get into the Big Ten. But if you can't get into the Big Ten, the SEC is a great place to be.
Here's the thing. I think about things systematically, and I'm listening to everything that you said. So you talked about the AAU, which isn't a problem, because I don't think this move happens within 4 years anyway. When the 2026 schedule that the ACC just announced is done. Also, Oklahoma and Texas move in 2 years, and this gives you enough time to be able to negotiate the deal in the manner in which it needs to be negotiated. I believe nowhere near as good estimates as this. I'm thinking this is a $150 million renegotiation if you add the 3 markets in the peninsula based upon where they're already projected to be at. Now, when you're talking about what a president has to do, and I'm also thinking in line with the cheat code here. what our last president's job, why he was brought to Florida State. Not this one currently, but when you said the AAU at Harvard being from there, him being a former president of Harvard, he knows what it takes and what a school needs to look like. But Florida State, as I tell my compatriots at FAMU, a great HBCU, I said it maybe used to be racism stuff in the 60s, but right now you're in the way. Florida State's trying to compete with Florida as the premier academic research institution in the state of Florida, which is part of the reason why they went to go get their med school, why they pushed for the law school, why they're pushing for their own engineering school apart from FAMU, which would devastate FAMU. But again, it's about business. But when you look at what we have here in the South that the Big Ten does not have, it's this thing called great weather. So when you talk about research from an agricultural perspective, all it does is enhance the opportunities, especially when you talk about the shared opportunity for resources. While yes, we get better libraries access, we get better this, you get better weather and more land that you didn't have before, which, so I look at the things as wow. And then you brought up an example, even though this example was well before any of us. I think it was before the last Great War. You said Chicago, correct? They dropped all their sports in 1940 something.
Yeah, exactly. 39.
1939. So they dropped all their sports, but they maintained that strength because of what they got by association. So they have albeit very long ago a history of allowing people to take risk and be able to make associations. So when I look at it as, wow, Florida, now maybe Clemson is more of a long shot, but I don't think Florida State goes without Clemson. I think the pitch is that is more to Florida State, not just can we get you more TV money, the actual university can come in and it's already kind of competing there, but we can grow the university to a manner in which it never been. I never knew about, all I knew is that Purdue has amazing facilities. And I don't know why Purdue has amazing facilities because the football doesn't match the facilities. But when you look at the billions, I'm like, wow, okay. I'm hearing the case for like right now, but like, I'm like, dang, if Florida State was in the Big Ten, like this is making me want to go, I don't care about school. But if all of this other stuff is true, this makes me want to really say bump the FCC. And then especially with this bar that I'm about to get you all kind of heat for when I retweet it, institutionally, the Big Ten cannot compete with the SEC. I can't wait to tell Florida fans that because they believe that they're just the smartest girl in the school.
Well, and I'll tell you in all honesty. So, I mean, I know you guys hate them, but I mean, Miami's also a great school. And if I were the Big Ten and I was looking at who I wanted to add, and I wanted Mark and I talked about this on the Miami show. 4 that I think would look really, really, really good that would be very potentially make a statement for the Big Ten would be Virginia, North Carolina, you guys in Miami. That would give everybody pairs and also, very much plant that flag in the state. And I mean, I would guess, I don't know anything about your president, but I would guess he would love nothing more than to put you guys on an AAU track. And I know Miami's trying to do the same thing. And so, I think, for you guys in Miami, maybe more so than you guys in Clemson. I don't see Clemson as a big. Clemson is just, it's very SEC-ish as a school. I don't see it doesn't seem very Big Ten-y. I could see you guys in Miami before I could see Clemson.
Along those same lines, you talked about,
or Georgia Tech. Also Georgia Tech would be a great Big Ten school. They need to get their football in gear.
You talked about the TV numbers, and that's the big thing. I've worked in television, Mark's worked in television. And let's just be honest, that's what this is a lot about, is the TV money. There's reports that the Big Ten is desperately trying to get Notre Dame. So my question is this. If the Big Ten is to get Notre Dame, because they're looking for a new TV partner for starting in the 2024 season, and Notre Dame brings that big peacock that pays me every 2 weeks, NBC Universal, how valuable is that Notre Dame bringing that NBC contract, if they can bring that NBC contract into the Big Ten, and at that point, how valuable is that for a school like Florida State and like Miami, for example, to leave an ACC that right now is sharing an ESPN ABC contract with 4 other conferences to go to a network, to go to a conference that would basically have one network?
Well, so that NBC contract was really great when they signed it in like 1990. It's pretty crappy right now. think it only gives them 15 million a year.
Hey, be nice to the Peacock. Be nice.
Okay, sorry, Peacock. I think it only gives them 15 million a year. Like it is actually not a good contract. Notre Dame is very well endowed with their endowments. They have a lot of money. They have a lot of revenue streams from different areas, so they don't rely on the football money as much as most other schools. But actually, Notre Dame, like we make a big deal about Notre Dame having their own contract. Financially, it's crap. Like Notre Dame would be better off financially in the ACC itself. They, again, big picture strategically, they think they're better off with their different revenue streams in their business model. But the NBC money is not particularly good for Notre Dame. Notre Dame would be much better off in any of the conferences. Looking at the TV watching data, where's our TV viewers? So here's you guys. I mean, you guys are a huge national brand. Look at you here in the ACC. The only people drawing more, this is over a 5-year period, are Clemson and Notre Dame. They're the only people in the ACC drawing more than you guys. And I'll tell you, Clemson is only doing that in the Dabo era. So if Clemson goes back to normal Clemsoning, they're nothing like this. One of the questions I think is, can you really sustain what you've done? Clemson has had a wonderful, 8 years or so? Can they sustain that for the future? I don't know. You guys have sustained it for like 30 of the last 40 years. You guys have been a power. I always get a little antsy, for someone to say we're going to hitch our wagon to an institution that is really just based on like one coach's success over 7 years. I don't think it's not a very Big Ten way to do it. They want to see 50 years of success and academic success that dwarfs anything Clemson has got. You guys are showing 40 years of academic upward trajectory. I mean, weren't you guys like a normal school as of like the 50s or something?
We don't want to talk.
We were all girls school until after the second Great War.
Right.
Yeah, like think about that. Just think about the trajectory that the institution has had to now be one of the better schools in the country. There you are. So in the Power 5 right now, you are the number 36 school ranked in Power 5. Right there with Penn State, Utah, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina State, TCU. Like, you guys are a great school, and every year you're getting better. So, I mean, I think if we have this conversation in 4 years from now, because it sounds like you're not going anywhere with the ACC grant of rights, we have this conversation 4 years from now, you guys might be in the AAU. Who knows? Like, I think Florida State's on a great trajectory, and Florida State has a great story. The fact that you were the all-girls school, like that's not an embarrassing thing. That's like awesome.
So along those lines, after you just bashed my employer, I appreciate you for that one, Tony.
Who did I bash? I'm sorry.
You bashed my employer, NBC. I appreciate your
support. Oh no, it's a good deal for NBC. Oh yeah, and Universal, like it's a very profitable deal for Comcast.
Thank you. We appreciate it on that one. But I guess my question would be, if Notre Dame were to join the Big Ten, let's say Notre Dame joins in a perfect world, and a Florida State and a Miami join, and let's say North Carolina. Let's say those are the four that join the Big Ten. How attractive is that Big Ten if you're presenting that resume to NBC, to CBS, or maybe just re-upping to Fox for that next TV contract? Talk about what that resume would mean to any TV partner.
Well, that's a big resume. So, by the way, here's the top 10. You're looking at North Carolina's number 10, Stanford's number 1. I mean, I think if Notre Dame goes, I think you see Stanford go with them. To be totally honest, and I know that some folks will probably bash me for that. I 100% think Stanford would sneak in as Notre Dame's partner. I think I don't know that they would take anybody from the ACC yet with this whole grant of rights thing. But thinking more strategically long term, if I were you guys, I would bide my time for a couple more years and just see how long you can string this out before you have to make a decision. And I think that decision is, if you could get into the Big Ten, and you should lobby for it and push for that. There's actually an amazing story. I can send it to you guys, or Mark probably has it. You could post it. It's the story of how Utah lobbied for the Pac-12. You guys should do the exact same thing for the Big Ten. It's a great story, and it's about the president like pushing hard, getting to know all the other presidents of the other schools and telling them, hey, I know you're going after Texas and Texas A&M. That is going to blow up in your face. 100%. I promise. When it does, we're ready. And they had themselves as ready because people are like, oh, Texas is perfect for the Big Ten or the Pac-12. Texas is perfect, and that blew up. They got the Longhorn Network. USC and UCLA were like, oh, you're not bringing that year, and it sort of the deal fell apart. For you guys could do the same thing Utah did, and that's position yourselves to be ready. And with the SEC, if the SEC had that offer, had the chance to give you guys the offer, you should take it. Because, that's the play. You want to hitch your wagon to somebody, and if you can get it, you should take it. But if you can hold out for a couple more years, and somehow in the Big Ten could be an option. And we're looking at numbers here. We're looking at data. We're looking at history. We're looking at what they say. You never know. Your president could have those relationships where he can get you guys in regardless. In which case, Christmas time. But if not, the SEC is like a phenomenal place to be. You guys are a absolutely elite global brand. You need to get your team back winning. But people are still watching your games, even though you stink. People don't think of you as stinking. You're kind of like my beloved Trojans in this regard. People think of you being what you are as a brand and as a school. Your merchandise. You can buy Florida State stuff anywhere in the country. You can buy Florida State stuff. And that's a huge advantage, I think, to anybody. And so one of the things that they should be doing is helping sell your school, sell your brand. I think they should be selling your academics, talking about that. Because they don't really talk about that. You have to actually know academics to know that Florida State is just on an ascendancy of success and really becoming a great school. And I think that, back in the 80s, like you guys are always on the top ranks of like party schools. Now you are very close to Florida in most metrics. It's awesome. And I think that the more you can sell that, the better.
I joke with people. I just actually last week I had a drink at my bar with a Rhodes Scholar. Garrett Johnson, who I went to college with, and I know I saw Myron Roll about a month ago. So many of my teammates are doctors. A lot of these different things. I always tell people, like, they say jocks are stupid, but don't get it twisted. I've got some guys that I'm grateful that they got a football scholarship because that's probably the only way they were going to school. But there's some tremendously intelligent people, also business savvy, in our ranks. I remember when I played when everybody started changing their mascots. And our president, TK, we have a history of presidents not being afraid of stepping up and standing up and doing the right thing. He threatened to leave the NCAA if they even tried to issue a warning or sanctions for us to have to try to remove our name as the Seminoles. So even with some of the people I know, even the GOR is it sounds good in theory, but I know a lot of times when there's a lot of money on the table, people always love to say, let's take it up in court. And there's an interesting thing with courts and case law and things like that. This stuff is interesting to me. I may not act like it, but I am really intrigued. Well, I might have to bring you on my show to do this whole thing again because you got me like, yo, I'm sorry, Mark. I don't want to take anything from you, but this is making me geek out right here. But
I'm glad to help. There's a ton. I'll tell you, so there's about 70 pages of stuff here. There's a ton of financial stuff in the back of this slide deck that you'll probably find even more fascinating.
Right. And I just like the way that it's not a presentation on, even though I don't think that all of that stuff will come into fruition, but it's hard to argue. Like, you make a very good argument of why you don't match, or you match this conference better than you do that conference. I just think that's awesome. But the GOR, when you look at the Marshall case and what they did to sue to get out of the Conference USA, and basically going for, not eminent domain. That's something else. Anyways, they're protected under government entities are protected to where you can only sue them for so much money. Yeah. And Marshall is making this case, and if FSU and a bunch of other schools, that's it. Appreciate it. If they do this and they continue to drag this out in the courts, which is a 10-year issue, it's similar to Big Pharma. But Big Pharma knows that they're going to have something that has side effects, but they know they're going to make $100 billion on it, and they know they're going to have to pay out 10. They're looking at it as a $90 billion net. So if they stretch this out, it's going to have to go to two things. It's going to have to either go to the Supreme Court, in which is the Supreme Court going to actually make a ruling in favor of anybody with the NCAA? they've proven consistently no. And they don't want to, if you open up that can of worms that you can sue a government entity for a ton of money, I actually won't mind it. It might be anarchy. If it gets to that.
I'll tell you an even more interesting one. Do you guys know what happened with the Big East versus the ACC's lawsuit? You guys probably weren't paying much attention to that, but that got thrown out of court because it became a clown show. What happened was you guys originally invited. Eventually, they all came to the ACC, but when they were first pillaging the Big East, they were bringing Syracuse, but not Virginia Tech. So then all the Big East schools sued all the ACC schools, and it was going to be this huge, dramatic court mess. Well, then the Virginia legislature stepped on Virginia and said, we are going to force you to veto this edition if you don't get in Virginia Tech. So they uninvited Syracuse and invited Virginia Tech. And then the lawsuit, which is already just this cluster of stupidity, Virginia Tech and Syracuse filed motions to switch sides of the lawsuit from plaintiffs to defendants and defendants to plaintiffs. And the judge was like, okay, no, this is stupid, childish, like joke. This is not a real lawsuit. You're all just playing games with each other, and threw it out of court. So you might see something like that, where if things like really just devolve into chaos, it devolves into such chaos that the court is like, you are all children playing games.
So, Tony, I guess my final question, I will wrap it up with this. Finish this sentence for me. In 5 years, Florida State will be...
In the SEC would be my guess. SEC is a great conference. It's a great place for Florida State. It's regionally perfect. There's no baseball games in Minnesota in February. Link Jarrett's glad to not be playing in South Bend anymore. I mean, I think you guys could be in the SEC. If you can find your way into the Big Ten, that is even better.
Tony, the best news I heard today was you validating my recommendation to the Big Ten to add Notre Dame and Stanford. Thank you for that.
Oh, I fully think. I mean, and bear in mind, I can't stand Stanford. I do love laughing at the Stanford tree on Twitter, because the Stanford tree will own people on Twitter. But I consider Stanford an evil nemesis, but just an amazing institution. I think that they get this. I think they get the Big Ten bid no matter what. But I think they sneak in quietly, because they sneak in quietly on all things that they do.
There's a site, Sports Media Watch. I've delved into that because it shows the network TV rankings and ratings and viewership for every game in college football for like the last 10 or 15 years. And I can't wait to do some more work with that, because it's pretty interesting to see. And as you said, the Florida State brand, even through under 500 seasons, losing seasons, is still holding up and bringing people, eyeballs to the TV sets. It's pretty incredible.
Mark, we should chat on that too, because I have their last 5 years of data by game, and I have it synced in with the database with all of their academic and institutional figures too.
Very nice.
So
I'm going to loan you out to James. That's the least I can do for James. He's done so much for me. So have at it.
But I think you guys are going to be good to go no matter what. I mean, you guys are Florida State's in a great position is the big thing. Conference realignment makes people just get paranoid and antsy in just a terrible place. But I think if you're Florida State, like, you're in as good a place as you can be, especially if you guys can win some games.
Well,
so James just tweeted out the show. You can follow everybody. Tony on Twitter at TJ Altimore. You see it right there on the banner right there. Consultant, strategist, really smart guy that's put together a ton of research and brings not just the numbers, but the insight into the explanation of what it means, which we always appreciate. There's numbers, and then there's the context and the explanation of the numbers, and putting it into some type of a working system and format for sure. Tony, thanks for stopping by.
Thanks, you guys.
Tony. Thank you, buddy.
Great to meet y'all.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, great stuff from Tony.
You brought the academics this week. I mean, normally I'm the smartest guy in the room, but then you bring in that guy, man. Damn.
I missed that last comment, Jason. Don't repeat.
You heard me.
But I didn't hear it, but there's no reason to repeat it.
You heard me. You know what else
We
you're
know
about to
that James is the smartest guy in the room. You don't need to repeat that. That's a given. It's a given.
You know what else you're about to hear, Mark?
You know what we're about to hear, James. You know what? It's that time of the show that
Been
James
done.
delivers his
Oh,
hot
the hot
take.
takes or
We
smash
gotta
the
hear
like
the hot
button?
takes.
It's hot take time. It's hot take
Oh,
time.
okay.
It's our fourth
Hot
hot
takes.
take.
We give
time.
you your own segment, Jason. You don't have to brag about how smart you are, too.
Well, I mean, you
Just,
were
one or the other.
you were patting yourself on the back earlier with Tony there for a second. But
Well, I looked over media markets. I looked over academics. I looked over the football, of course. And I came to the conclusion, if you're going to add Big Ten, if you're going to add Notre Dame, add Stanford. And I figured, I got obliterated by people who were like, Stanford sucks. Why would you add Stanford? Well, they've sucked in football for 3 years. That doesn't mean they can't win in football. And I backed it up. And then I hear Tony present it. He's like, add Notre Dame and Stanford. And I'm like, wow, okay, I'll take that.
And I'm going to give you both credit. You both called this whole realignment thing from the beginning. James called it before it happened. Mark, you've been saying it for a while, so let's give you guys both credit.
Yeah, James, what did you mention? Sorry, Jason, to cut you off. I'm glad you brought that up. James, what did you mention in our DM the other day in regards to when all this started to break loose last summer that you had recommended or predicted?
No, I predicted that this was going to happen. That was going to be actually I said 4 conferences, but I did predict that this shift was going to happen. It's just and I guess this isn't a good strong argument against an academic stance because I really enjoyed what Tony did, and I'm about to tell people they got to go. And it wasn't over the top, nerdy. Like anybody can follow that, even me with the 2.111117 GPA. But I think business is the only thing more American than anything is money. Like so, the money's just going to be too big. Like over 10 years. You're talking about the potential to have $1.5 to $2 billion per academic institution. That's on par with any research grant that you can get. But I was thinking that it would be 4 conferences that will battle out. You take your 4 top seeds, and then you have a couple, at-large teams that battle for each other, and then you find your college football champion there. But then when this stuff happened, I just straight up said FSU to the Big Ten. I don't believe Florida will allow us to be in the same conference as them. I just think there's a lot of pettiness when it comes to that.
The one question that I asked Tony, and he's unable to answer it, and it's not because he's not smart or hasn't done his research. It's just too complicated, and he doesn't know the people involved and where they're going to go. But he brings to the table this is the football money, and then over here on this side is the academic money. Well, how much do they impact each other? That's the question I have. Is how much? Okay, we're losing. This is a 30 million per year better football deal, but this is $100 million more academic deal. How much of is there a formula there? And it may depend on the school that, okay, we're going to work together on this. Or is it just flat out, we're an academic school, we're making academic decisions and we make so much more money at that. Or, we're more of an athletic football school and that's going to drive it. And we aspire to do great things on the football, how much of that mixes.
My opinion, I know Jason got to get his hot take in, but I call it leather helmet money. The difference between most of these schools in the Big Ten and Florida State or even these other ones is they've been playing ball or they've been around since before we even had 50 states. Some of these schools. So they were an academic institution that picked up sports as it blew up, but they had to advance and adapt. And I think that's what every academic institution has done. Any good business has to adapt to what the power of the time is. Even Florida State has. Florida State, when I went in 2002, they told us that the goal was to make Doak Campbell Stadium the center of campus. And that in 1980, they made a deliberate attempt to grow the university through athletics. So that's when they started pushing and having a more athletic focus. And if you look at everything between having the, I remember the superpower magnet, you have the weather, the med school, all these other different advances have all come from the exposure that you get, that you can only get from TV. I say that to say is that I think these schools are doing both. And if they'll be foolish and not responsible to turn down that kind of money that is turnkey, because Rome needs her gladiators, and America's gladiators are currently football players. That's why it's the most popular sport professionally and amateurly.
Before we turn Jason loose on his hot takes, I'm going to take the segue and take advantage of Jason starting to pat me on the back and let everybody know. James predicted that. Look at Jason's face. James predicted what he predicted about this all coming together as it currently is. Mine would be, after the Big 12 lost Texas and Oklahoma, I immediately posted a video and I said, go get Houston, BYU, Cincinnati, and UCF. Those are the 4 best schools, football, media markets, areas of the country for recruiting to go get and beef up your conference. Okay, I'm done.
All right, well, back over to me, over to the smartest guy in the room. Yeah, I said it again, Mark. You heard me there a second time. All right, so the past couple of weeks we've talked about how Florida State's going to start the season. I think they're going to start the season 4-2 after the first 6 games of the season. Last week I said Florida State would end with 4 straight wins in the entire month of November. That gives us 8 wins. I think that's it. I think Florida State will get 8 wins this season. I think Florida State finishes 8-4. I think 2 of their losses will have something in common, because my hot take number 4, Florida State loses both games after the bye week. I think Florida State has the bye week after LSU. I think Florida State will start the season 2-0. I think they have the bye week, then they play Louisville on a Friday night. I don't trust playing at Louisville. I don't trust playing on Friday nights. I think Florida State loses at Louisville. And I think our other bye week is before the Georgia Tech game. Do I think we're better than Georgia Tech? Yes. Do I think we have better athletes than Georgia Tech? Yes. Have we beaten Georgia Tech since James and I's sophomore year in a regular season? No, we have not. So I just have this weird suspicion that Florida State will lose both games after the bye week this season.
If Mike loses to Jeff Sims twice, I am going to slap Mike with the tomahawk steak that I bought him.
Stop it.
Because dadgummit just did not have to happen.
This is 4th edition there, Mark. It's 4th edition of Hot Takes.
Oh,
this is
my bad.
take.
I just typed up that banner. I deleted the previous one.
It was so hot you forgot it. No, I have this weird feeling like Georgia Tech. It's the same way I've talked about Miami. That Miami will not be back until they beat the teams they're supposed to beat. I still think Florida State will be better this season. I think we finished the year 8-4. I think we lose to NC State and Clemson, as well as Louisville and Georgia Tech. But I just have that weird suspicion. Now, why is that 8-4 record important? Stay tuned for next week, because I'm going to tell you why Miami fans and Florida fans are going to hate me. Stay tuned for that next week. I mean, they already hate me.
Florida State fans, if you go 8-4 this year, feel good.
Yes.
If you go 8-4 and don't get blown out by more than like one team out of those 4 losses, that's a step in. That's a huge step in the right direction. Against that schedule, absolutely.
That's Big Ten level progress right there.
That's right.
I really want to go to the Big Ten. I don't want to. I'm terrified of Alabama and Mississippi. I'll go to Columbus, Ohio. I haven't seen my dad since I was 17. That'll give me a chance to maybe go see him, and then take my son to go see him. I'm not going. Other than that, Donato's Pizza is not that good. It's good, but it ain't good enough to go to Columbus, Ohio, and just go get me a slice. And I just really like the energy that the Big Ten plays with.
James, I'll leave it at this right here. We'll end this with this. Florida State fans, Florida State the football team, Florida State the school, we are too civilized to be part of the SEC.
We are institutionally greater.
Yes. So
we institutionally match with the smart people in the Big Ten and not the dummies in the SEC. That's not us being pretentious. That's what the data suggests.
We just brought the presentation for y'all. That it's confirmed. You can't. The numbers don't lie, as they say. All right, everyone. Florida State Live. See you back here next week at 6. Big game. James Coleman. Lock it in with him. Jason Parker, NBC 6. See you next week.